The mental and physical health of the healthcare team, especially the nurses, has to come first. Because if you're not physically and mentally and spiritually in a good place, you cannot help other people. We're going to have less good healthcare. We're going to have more errors. We're going to have less safety. And we're going to have another 100,000 nurses leaving the field.
You're listening to the Oncology Nursing Podcast, where ONS Voices talk cancer, a resource from the Oncology Nursing Society. Through conversations with subject matter experts, we examine the important issues in oncology nursing, from new treatments to patient-centered research to advancements in clinical practice. Join us as we hear from nurses in all facets of oncology care, from bench to bedside and everywhere in between. Welcome to the Oncology Nursing Podcast.
We were heroes for a bit, but now we are yelled at more than ever. What happened? We still showed up for years. We sacrificed our lives and families to help others. At the same time, so much love has been shown. It makes me cry. Most don't share the truth of their mental health and how much we are struggling. We don't want to burden our coworkers around us. We feel respect from our leaders when bedside nurses are allowed to have a prominent seat at the table of decision-making. We're all aware of the challenges facing nursing today, but what are the solutions?
Hello, and welcome to the Oncology Nursing Podcast. I'm your host, Lenise Taylor, Oncology Clinical Specialist at ONS. And the comments I just read are real testimonials from ONS Congress attendees at a special session about our mental health as we battle all of the stressors we're facing in today's healthcare environment. Today, we're talking with that Congress session's presenter, Matthew Loscalzo, about the stressors that nurses face and how you can battle them to improve your mental health. Matt is the Executive Director of People and Enterprise Transformation, Emeritus Professor of Supportive Care Medicine, and Professor of Population Sciences at City of Hope in Duarte, California. As a reminder, you can earn free NCPD contact hours after listening to this episode and completing the evaluation we've linked in the episode notes. Thanks for joining us today, Matt.
It's great to be here. It is a profound honor.
We are in such a season of uncertainty in healthcare, and that can take a toll on nurses' mental health. Can you briefly elaborate on the concepts of uncertainty and certainty in the context of healthcare profession?
Absolutely. We do know that healthcare and nursing is a microcosm and is reflective of what's happening in our larger society. Never before have we had so many sources of information, so many places to actually get knowledge, but at the same time, we also are in a situation where we have leaders who are supposed to lead and unify us and solve problems and pull us together, doing the exact opposite. So as we think about nursing specifically, and if you think across society, nurses have always taken this role of being the heart of healthcare, but they're also the expertise of healthcare. So as we think about what we've all been going through, and it's not only COVID, it's the political environment and the divisiveness that some people are using for personal gain. And if you think about those who seek personal gain, nurses are at the other end of that. They are always given. Because they are always giving and because they have such a deep set of humanistic values, this is foreign environment for them, both in society and in the healthcare system. Because as you and I have talked about in the past, Lenise, if the healthcare system is sick, how can society be healthy?
That is so profound. How does that uncertainty affect nurses' mental health?
It does affect nursing, and it affects all of us, but it especially affects nursing given their actual values and their training. Lack of control and predictability is associated with uncertainty, and uncertainty is at the heart of the human condition. But the convulsions experienced in healthcare today are unprecedented. It's a reflection of what's going on in society, not only in the terms of change of actual status, but just thinking about the impact of 100,000 nurses leaving the field. These are the backbone, the foundation of our healthcare system. Without nurses, there is no healthcare system. There's also been a shift in our society from trust to mistrust. And that has not only undermined nursing, but also healthcare overall and within the actual system. And there's another level that I think we really need to talk about and how that's impacting on all of us in healthcare. And that is the hyper capitalism that's taken over human medicine and also veterinary medicine. If we're thinking about healthcare as a social right has now become so much turned into a cash crop. We need to talk more about what the impact of that is because it reverberates throughout the system.
Can you give us an overview of the types of stressors that nurses may face throughout their career?
Absolutely. Well, the first one is, of course, the overwork. Really, nurses, again, they are the ones who keep the system going. There is overwork, but there's something even bigger, even more sinister, and that is this evolving lack of respect throughout our society, but when it manifests in the healthcare system, where people come in vulnerable states to be protected, and they have this adversity to those who care most about them. This is a profound change. This is a unique change. And although it's happening throughout society for all of a authority, when it's in the healthcare system, it manifests in a profoundly different way. And the impact on nurses cannot be overstated. Nurses have compassion and they have huge levels of expertise. And the work they do, especially in oncology, is so specific, is so high pressured, is so stressful. You can't make any errors or those people get hurt. And yet, many people spend more awake time at work than they do at home. And when most nurses go home, whoever she or he are, they have other duties that they also have to perform. So we have to look at the big picture, the whole biopsychosocial picture, and think about how do we make people physically healthier? How do we create environments that are psychologically supportive of good coping? And how do we create teams and healthcare systems at the social level that reinforce mental and physical health? One of the major issues that I think we haven't talked about and need to more and not apologize. It's not only overwork, but we need more love in the healthcare setting. And that's what it's always been about, helping the most vulnerable. I think one of the most biggest changes has been the lack of respect, which is absolutely unacceptable, that is reverberating throughout the entire healthcare system for healthcare professionals, but nobody gets it more than nurses at the bedside. And of course, through no fault of their own, is this change of status in the public because of the political divisiveness, which has consciously been created by too many politicians who are really much more demagogues than problem solvers and uniters. Trust has been undermined at every level in our society. And if we looked at the healthcare system, it's better because of the advocacy that nursing in particular has done over the last 50 years. So it's a complex picture, but it comes down to humanistic values being put right back at the top of the list, and healthcare not being abused the way that it has been.
That is an incredible way of putting that. I think nurses always think about how we feel about things, and then we've tried to become more putting out there for more critical thinkers and the work that we do and how real that work is. But you've looped it back to the emotional side of it and the mental side of it, which is really the art of nursing, right? It's the combination of the emotional side of it as well as the physical work that we do.
You really nailed it there. If you think about who nurses are, they are compassionate experts. They have amazing levels of specialized training, not only on the medical and the nursing side, but especially on the human side. They make that connection for all of us. No one spends more time with patients, inpatients or outpatients, than the nurse does. They know things about the family. They know things about the patient that are essential for healing patients and for helping them to manage those problems that can't be fixed, but a human presence can heal. And I think nurses are at the forefront. We need to say that in an unapologetic way. You know, the bottom line is that nurses have compassion and expertise. So they are compassionate experts. Without the expertise, you have compassion, but you could be a volunteer. And with only the expertise without compassion, you're more like a robot. And we know that nurses merge those two more than just about any other group, compassionate experts.
Thank you. Can you provide some examples of how nurses can overcome their stressors?
Well, I think most of all, we need to understand that nurses are human beings and they have limits. We all have actual limits. And I think the moment we accept that we have limits, that giving everything we got sometimes is not the appropriate response. And I want to offer this up. Nurses' first obligation is to their own mental and physical health and that of their families. And I say that, and it may upset some folks because bottom line is, we do care about patients, but patients cannot come first. The mental and physical health of the healthcare team, especially the nurses, has to come first. Because if you're not physically and mentally and spiritually in a good place, you cannot help other people. We're going to have less good healthcare. We're going to have more errors. We're going to have less safety. And we're going to have another 100,000 nurses leaving the field. Who's going to take care of our country? We need to confront this head on and not apologize. So when we think about health, we think about the body, the way we think and feel, and how society creates environments which support either ill health or good, strong mental and physical health. Because you can't really separate out physical and mental health. We especially know that in the cancer field. If a patient has pain, they're more likely to be anxious. If the pain becomes chronic, they're more likely to be depressed. And we know that depression is linked with hopelessness, suffering, and suicide. So when we think about nurses who day after day are giving their all at the bedside, often being overworked, often being overstaffed, and as you and I saw in the data from the Congress, Lenise, they're also feeling disrespected. Feeling disrespected is devastating to people who have compassionate expertise, especially in an environment of high complexity and high stress, which is the normal everyday environment for overstressed and overworked nurses.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on what the nurse can do on the individual level, and then maybe what can be done as a team to affect these stressors?
Yes, absolutely. And we went into, at the Congress, in the talk that I shared with the help of the ONS team, we did share an actual model. It's the biopsychosocial spiritual model. And that is, you cannot be mentally healthy if you are bedraggled, exhausted, and do not take care of yourself. And that's why I argue that self-care is self-preservation. Self-care is healthier medicine. Self-care is role modeling for the next generation of not only nurses, but residents and interns and physicians and social workers and psychologists and chaplains. They have a key role because they're the welcomers of all these trainees into the system. What can the nurse do? The nurse can take a step back and say, am I honoring my body? Am I getting enough sleep? Am I eating healthy? Am I using things like meditation when I need to get calmer and to control myself so I act in ways that I am proud of? Am I surrounding myself in an environment that reinforces my mental and physical health? So everything starts with the body. And when it comes to coping, it usually goes to the breath. I mean, breathing from the abdomen, getting your body in as relaxed state as you can. And we recommend that people, before they get out of bed, nurses, the women and men in nursing, before they even get out of bed, they get grounded and realize my mental and physical health matters. And to just do some deep breathing, remember that sense of calm, remember why you came into the field, and carry that sense of calm with you throughout the day. I mean that. Throughout the day, remember what it was like right before you got out of bed and you felt that sense of calm. Go back and get it when you feel under siege or when you feel anxious or when you feel rushed. But you cannot be shot out of a cannon in the morning and expect you're going to get calmer later. You have to take responsibility for your own physical health. No one's going to take care of us. We have to take care of ourselves. That's on the physical level, eating right, and really starting the day with the right frame of mind, which leads us into the psychosocial and the psychological. On a psychological level, we have to realize that there's no separation in our spirits and in our brains and in our psyche between work and home. Work affects home, home affects work. Our psychological state is more than at work or more than at home. We need to ask ourselves, am I going into work and making things better for my colleagues? Am I creating emotional contagion with my frustration or my anxiety? Because if I am, we need to take responsibility for that ourselves and say, I need to be psychologically healthy. I should go and get counseling. I should be exercising more. I should be surrounding myself with people who push me up, who pull me up, who make me eat healthier, who make me get out of the house, who make me physically move, who reinforce the healthiest parts of me. Because one of the biggest questions any of us can ask in any field is the way I'm acting today with my team, with myself, with my body, in society, a day, a month, a year from now, am I going to be proud of that? Am I living my values, my humanistic nursing values? Psychologically, that's our foundation, our values. Values should be driving our behaviors. Behavior should not be driving our values. If we get that backwards, we cannot be psychologically healthy. One of the most important things, though, to be psychologically healthy, totally driven by the data, is flexibility. When we are flexible, we are more likely to solve problems better. We are more likely to share a way of coping and thinking and healing and respect with our colleagues, because the psychological can only happen within a social context. So I want to just talk about another thing that nurses can do tomorrow, and it costs no money, and that is look at your team and ask yourself the difficult question. On this team of people who are working hard, who are committed to others, and who are committed to each other, am I creating an environment that's healthier? Am I going to be proud? Am I proud of how I interact with my team members? Do I trust them? Do I respect them? Do I show them kindness? Think about this. How many times a day do we have the opportunity to share kindness with our colleagues? And we miss the opportunity because we're so emotionally charged and we're so stressed. Our mental situation affects our team, affects the institution, affects patient care. So we've got to know that we're social beings. And if our team is supporting each other, if our team has the courage to give positive feedback about growth areas and positive feedback about when we have grown, then that's mental and physical health. The team is the core. Most of us cannot impact in a large way what leadership or administration does. Few systems are built like that, although they should be. However, we can communicate with our team. We can have the courage and the audacity to say, let's support each other on being mentally and physically healthy. And this affects the spiritual as well. Reach within yourself. Find within yourself someone who you respect and admire. It could be someone from the past. It could be someone in your present life. It could be someone who you can imagine into the future. Go and conjure them when you're feeling stressed. Conjure them when you want to be proud of yourself. You can do this. The brain is built like this. It can do many, many different things. So as we think about how can we create the maximum coping and sense of transcendence in doing this difficult, challenging, meticulous work, I think we have to start with the biopsychosocial spiritual model. It's there for us, but we have to help each other to get there. It's a team sport.
That was amazing. I do think back to one of the things that we heard at Congress, going back to when you get up first thing in the morning, taking that moment to center yourself. And one of our other speakers shared one of the things that she does is she takes a moment and puts her hand on her heart and does a few minutes of breathing. And that just centers her to get things moving in the morning. And I thought exactly of that when you mentioned to just take a few moments for yourself when you wake up in the morning.
What I'm thinking is really what you said and what the other speaker said to me speaks to me at so many levels. You put your hand on your heart, and there's that space between your brain and your heart that I think that's where we should inhabit. We need to be wise. We need to have wisdom. We need to have training, but we also need to go back to our core values, the core values that other people matter. And mostly, I cannot help those other people unless I am centered. And I believe in touching your heart really makes that connection in a very physical way that you can carry with you throughout the day, because we know often the way our mornings start, the way our day starts often carries throughout the day, because we're working so hard, we're so busy, and this work, again, is so meticulous. You need to think so hard, and everything we do has great complexity to it. So I think that other speaker nailed it.
So one of the other things that you discussed in your session was about a staff leadership model. Can you share a little bit about how it relates to nurses' well-being?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's one of the most powerful things that it can. If it's okay with you, can I just read a quote from some of the feedback we got at the conference? And this is a written quote, if I can read it.
Go ahead.
It's about respect. It's always about respect. Respect is listening to ideas to increase moral and actually to consider them. Respect is having my feelings and concerns being acknowledged and addressed. And I know that, Lenise, you and I have talked about this, and so much of the responses in the Congress were about having agency, about being part of a team and having influence over one's everyday job. The staff leadership model is a specific intervention which we have published, and it's a programmatic approach in which every team member is expected to be a leader in their own area. That means having control over what they are doing. This includes the obligation to openly question and challenge everything, being personally accountable in that challenging. The core value of the staff leadership model is to provide the same level of compassion and expertise that we provide to patients to each other. Now, we know that there are many decisions that are made and many that have to be made that we don't have a voice in. But if we focus on what we can influence, we can influence the team. And there are some very specific ways that we can do that. And one way is to look at emotional contagion in the team, in ourselves and others, and to talk about it. Are we reinforcing coping, support? Are we reinforcing that at the end of the shift is a sense of satisfaction? Or are we reinforcing that we can't talk about the things that matter most in the team? Are there regularly scheduled meetings that are honest, courageous, and compassionate about how to get the best from each other? Not just talking about what we see where people have to grow, but how they have already grown, and to support that, and to understand that secrets are fertile ground, undermining an evil. No secrets, no going underground. And that leads to things like no blind copying. One of the things that we do, we human beings, when we're under stress and we feel that people have power over us, is we demonize them. Everyone in our healthcare system works hard and is stressed. The moment we demonize others, whether it's on the team or it's the CEO, we lose the opportunity to engage with them in a much deeper level. And equally, we create tension and conflict within ourselves because we don't see them as people. No demonizing. It takes courage not to demonize. It takes courage to see the perspective from the other team members. And also, and I think this is a big one, we need to maximize the opportunities to show kindness and respect to each other. Because if it doesn't come from the team, it doesn't matter, because these are the people with whom we work. So the team really does matter. And everything that I've just said about the team goes for when you go home with your family. Work cannot be separate from home. Home cannot be separated totally from work. Take a step back. Is your family life as healthy as it needs to be to support you as an individual? You matter. And if it doesn't, seek colleagues, talk with colleagues, speak with professionals, and/or change the situation at home.
So very true. What are some of the strategies that leaders can use to address those safety and mental health concerns?
That's a great question, because this is a place where we can have major impact. One of the most powerful ways to do this is to create a culture of mutual growth and feedback. If we're waiting until there's a crisis or a problem, we have missed the boat. So one of the ways that we do that is to create regularly scheduled, I'm going to say that again, regularly scheduled opportunities to listen to each other, to support each other, and yes, to challenge each other to support the healthiest sides of us. It is essential that we realize we are complex, amazingly resilient people, but we have limits. And within each of us, there are multiple subselves. There are different aspects to our personalities. And what we often don't recognize is that we can go and find them and get them and say, in this meeting, I'm going to be proud of myself at the end of this meeting. I'm going to cope in a way, I'm going to share information in a courageous, compassionate way in which I am personally accountable. So how do I connect the healthiest part of me, the part I'm most proud of, with the healthiest part of you? And to say that question out loud, to focus on what you can influence in the here and now and in your own life space, especially at what can you influence. You can always influence yourself and the team because you're with them all day. One of the most powerful things, of course, is to build bridges of influence. If your team is tight, when your team goes to your management, to your administrator, it's different because it's one voice. It's not blaming, it's understanding, it's being compassionate, it's being courageous, and most of all, it's being curious about each other. But remember that you matter. Never make apologies for mattering. Never make apologies for what you need to do a great job to feel fulfilled as a person. So always start with, this is something that we need, that I need as an individual, that we need as a team. And because of our kindness, our compassion, our expertise, the institution needs it.
It's a really good point and a good way to approach that. Similar to professions like the firefighters and the military, how can we nurses get infrastructure for mental health clearance for trauma so the onus is on the system and not on the individual?
So actually, in the past, you and I have talked about blaming the victim. And I believe that meditation is helpful. Really, gratitude lists help some folks. I believe that psychotherapy can be very powerful. I think that having a spiritual sense is really helpful. Exercise, again, the data again and again shows is really, really more powerful as more and more of the data comes in. But structural change is essential. And structural change only comes with some conflict. And I mean healthy, democratic, respectful conversations with each other, with our teams, to advocate for healthier institutions. Because as I said earlier, society cannot be healthy if the healthcare system is not healthy. We are more than fixing broken bones. We are the health foundation for our system and our society. So we need to speak up when the communication is not healthy. We need to speak up when we feel that our voices are not being heard on the front lines. We need to say, I know you're trying to help us, but you came in talking about telling us how to fix a problem that we manage every day. Do you think next time you can come in, you can ask us how we see the problem and what we think would resolve the problem in a way that is effective and makes sense to this system? I don't think we can get anywhere without courage, compassion, and curiosity. I think you need all three.
I spoke with someone recently who said that she had been approached by a company with a solution to a problem, just exactly what you said, a solution to a problem that nurses were having. And she said, well, what bedside nurses did you have at the table when you were coming up with this solution? And they said, oh, well, we came up with a solution without them. And then she said, we'll go back to them and get their input, and then you can come back to me and we'll talk about it. And I think that's where we as nurses need to advocate for ourselves, to say exactly what you just said. Come to me to ask me what the problem is and how it's influencing the care that I'm delivering, and I will help you come up with a solution.
I think that is the formula. I think that is what a leader does, right? Because the culture is more powerful than any individual that we create within these systems. The culture is more powerful than what any individual or team can do. But once you start to change the culture of the team to being profoundly respectful, courageous, compassionate, and personally accountable, the system has to start to change as that moves to other areas. Because in institutions, other teams see how teams work. And when they see that there's kindness and there's honesty and there's saying hard things that enable each other to actually grow in a regularly scheduled way, so we're letting the air out of the tire slowly and not having a blowout, it changes the way everything works. Communication, mental and physical health, and wanting to come to work and to find that deep meaning that is inherent in this work, but that cannot survive in this toxic environment that we presently have.
So you've talked a lot about ways that nurses can improve their well-being, thinking about it both from a personal perspective as well as a professional perspective, and how the influence on home influences your work and vice versa. Can you put just like some bullet points in there to tie everything together about how nurses can improve their well-being through their daily lives?
Absolutely. Yes. I can tell you what nurses have taught me and what we've done together as a team. I met with a group of nurses just this actual week, and they're some of the best problem solvers I've ever met, some of the smartest, most practical people I have really ever met, and I've been learning from them my entire professional life. I think with all people, but especially in the complex environment of healthcare, focus on what you can influence. Look at your life as a circle and see yourself in that life and say, what can I actually influence? Rather than allowing myself to be frustrated by things that I cannot have any influence or control over. Life is filled with so much uncertainty. It's built into it. I need to focus on what I can have a say about and what I can influence. I think it's really important to work with colleagues openly, honestly, to create courageous environments of compassion. And compassion means having the audacity and the courage to share with colleagues things that they are doing that does not bring out the best in you, and to have the courage to say to them, listen, we work so closely, we are so interdependent. I would really appreciate it if you could give me feedback in real time about how I can be a better teammate, how I could be a better nurse, how I could be a better person. I'm inviting you to give me feedback. And you know what? If there are other people in the room, that's okay too, because we meet every month to have these kinds of conversations. And if we have them in real time feedback about behavior makes behavior change better than if it's retrospective when you don't quite remember what was happening. And I think we have to practice setting limits and saying this big word. The big word is spelled N-O, no. No, I cannot do this unless we look at what I'm doing and taking away something else. And that no is universal. That no is at home. That no is at work. Setting limits. And when possible, to find the yes in the no. I see you want me to have this to you by Friday. There's just no way I can do that unless we remove stuff or unless you give me another week. And the recommendation I make for mental health is when you think you could do a task within 12 hours, tell them you'll have it to them within 24 hours. So you don't, once again, do what nurses do, take on more than what any human being can possibly do. So you say 24 hours, and if you give it to them in 12 hours, they are elated and you're proud of yourself because you took care of your mental health and protected yourself from yourself. So practice saying no. Always try to find the yes in the no whenever possible. But let's be real. Your first obligation is to your own mental and physical health, because your patients, your team members, and your families will not have any of that if you're not able to do that because you're incapacitated. I think we should schedule what I call sacred time. Sacred time is the minimal I need to be a healthy individual. And if that's physical exercise, or if that's family time, or if that's taking time off, I think you need to protect your body, your soul, and your spirit. You have that obligation. And so you need to hold this time and be proud of it and don't apologize. And as you said, Lenise, home affects work and work affects home. You cannot expect to be in an unhealthy, abusive relationship at home or a non-supportive relationship at home and be able to come into work and to be the person you want to be. It takes too much psychic energy. We all have limits. And one of those limits is to have the courage. And this usually takes seeing a professional to take a step out and say, are my expectations at home and at work realistic or unrealistic? Because if they're unrealistic, you're going to be frustrated. You're going to feel beaten down. You're going to feel like a victim. And you may be a victim. So step out of that role, reach into yourself and say, I want to access the healthiest part of me, the part of me that holds true to my values of respect for myself and for my others, to love those who I love deeply, to be kind to my colleagues at work, and not to share emotional contagion of my own anxiety because I'm not getting the help I need and I'm undermining my team. That takes a lot of courage. But in my mind, that's what it means to really take care of oneself and each other. And that's based on values. And nursing values are the values of healthcare, deep, profound spiritual values, if you think about the core of the human being and the spirit that we want to create in healing and in health.
Those are some really good take-home bullets that I can focus on, that my colleagues can focus on, that we can all bring together to say, this is what we can do to take care of ourselves. And by doing that, we can help the system as a whole. Matt, this has been so great talking with you. I have a few questions that just really quick answers off the top that we can just wrap this up and put a bow on it. But there's not a bow in relation to healthcare, right? Or in relation to self-care. We just need to give people some tools. The first question I have is, what are some common misconceptions about stressors and nurses' mental health?
One of the biggest problems is that nurses feel that they should just work harder, cope harder. I get very upset when I hear people and I see it written that nurses should practice more meditation or that they should just work harder, cope harder. I mean, that is a misconception. It is toxic and it is dangerous. We have to look at nurses within the system, physicians within the system, all the healthcare professionals within the system, and say, how do we get them healthy? Because if we don't get them healthy, we don't have a healthy healthcare system. We don't have a healthy society. And right now, we don't have one of those.
What additional training or education do oncology nurses need to understand on how they can put their mental health first and effectively combat those stressors?
Well, I think the first one is to focus on what we can influence, always what we can influence, what's within our realm that we can have an impact. I think we should, most of all, advocate for reasonable, logical work demands. And there are some small things that are huge, such as childcare on site. The psychological impact of being able to go and see your child, whoever that person is, on site during lunch or during the day would go a long way to help with mental health and to deal with so much of the guilt and ambivalence and stress that nurses feel, both women and men. We need to make a stronger, healthy connection between work and home. And there are ways that we can do that. Be more flexible with work schedules. But really, mostly, it's looking at the actual demands put on nurses and how realistic are they. In the feedback that we got, that you and I looked at, Lenise, from the Congress, it was very clear what the nurses are really struggling with, and respect was really one of them. Asking someone to do an impossible job is disrespectful. Not asking their ideas and then listening is disrespectful. Think about how creative, how smart nurses are, the problems they deal with and manage effectively day in and day out. I think putting mental health first has to come first. Without that, none of us can be healthy.
Do you have any additional resources for patients and providers and for nurses who want to learn more?
Absolutely. In the last 2 to 3 years, with the new administration, the Surgeon General has focused squarely and directly on the health of healthcare workers. He has a beautiful paper which came out in 2022. Your listeners can just go online and type in Surgeon General Healthcare Professionals 2022. We also made it available during the Congress in the presentation with an active link. It's one of the most efficient, effective, comprehensive reviews I've seen on keeping healthcare professionals healthy. The largest group of healthcare professionals we know are nurses. I highly recommend, even if you're not giving presentations, to go and find yourself in that document. I'm there, you're there, we are all there. And we have a Surgeon General who really does care about healthcare professionals, cares about the impact of the licenses for those who go and get professional help, which I always recommend. I think for most people at some point in their lives, some short-term counseling to get some emotional distance and to plan their future can be very helpful.
Thank you. Do you have any final comments for our listeners?
I think about nurses, I think about physicians, I think about social workers and chaplains and pharmacists and all of our colleagues who we see every day, the dietitians. And this is what I think. I think we need to form coalitions with the healthiest parts of ourselves, with our colleagues, and none of us should be apologizing for the demanding workloads. We should demand realistic workloads. We should demand to be respected and to say no when the demands violate our personal virtues and values. We should focus back on our professional ethics. And it's only our virtues and our values that keep us the healers that we are.
Matt, I want to thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us both today and with the attendees at Congress, for sharing your knowledge and for giving us some tools for being able to take care of ourselves so we can take care of our patients and our families. Thank you so much.
It was my honor to be here.
Thank you for listening to the Oncology Nursing Podcast. Tell us about your favorite part in this episode by leaving a review wherever you download your podcast. For more resources and information about oncology nursing, visit us at ons.org or voice.ons.org. The ideas and opinions shared in this episode represent those of the guest and not necessarily ONS.